Director General of Military Operations of Pakistan called the Director General of Military Operations of India at 15:35 hours earlier this afternoon. It was agreed between them that both sides would stop all firing and military action on land and in the air and sea with effect from 1700 hours Indian Standard Time today.
Namaskar and Jai Hind. And today we are discussing the ceasefire in Operation Sindoor and its aftermath. And to discuss this, we have a very distinguished speaker in Major General Neeraj Bali. Major General Bali is an Indian Army veteran, a TEDx speaker, a corporate strategist, and the best-selling author of The Winning Culture, Lessons from the Indian Army to Transform Your Business. Major General Bali has been decorated with the Sena Medal for his leadership in counter-terrorism operations in Jammu and Kashmir. He has served and held key operational and strategic positions across Indian borders. And he is also the director of the think tank Gyan Chakra. Welcome to Samvad, sir.
Thank you very much, Miyak.
Sir, the Raksha Mantri, Shri Rajnath Singh, he was speaking yesterday and he said that Operation Sindoor is not over yet. And he said, ye to trailer hai, picture abhi baki hai. Would you say that at the present point in time, sir, militarily, before the ceasefire, this phase of Operation Sindoor is a job half done militarily and we could have degraded the Pakistani army even more? Or would you go by the perception that the operation served its strategic and political objectives and the ceasefire was the appropriate thing to do?
Right. So, in my considered opinion, we have to look at all the pointers, starting with what the Prime Minister said after the pahalgam attack. Now, let me remind everyone what he said. He didn't say we were going to attack Pakistan. He didn't say we were going to dismember Pakistan. He didn't talk about any other objectives. He said, we will go after the terrorists who did this to the other end of the earth if required, and we will finish the terrorists and the terrorist network. So the objective was very clearly laid out. As a matter of fact, in his subsequent speeches and the speeches of some of the other leaders in India, it has been made absolutely plain that we had no intention from day one to attack military infrastructure of Pakistan. And there's a reason for that, which I'll come to. So to that extent, I understand wars evoke emotion and a lot of countrymen are, excited, and I hear it all the time that I wish we should have finished Pakistan and we should have taken POK and etc., etc., etc. This is not realistic conversation. It exhibits a lot of josh, but it does not exhibit great understanding of strategy. In fact, there is a lack of strategic culture and information in our countrymen, many of them, and something which people like you do their very best to cultivate, to improve. So the objectives were limited. Now, having said that, what is the meaning of Op Sindoor is still not over and trailer abhi baki hai? The fact of the matter is, I believe, and I'm sure our leadership believes, that we are not just responding to one incident of Pahalgam. It has now reached a situation where we understand that this is a war. And this is a war. This is a long-term campaign. It's not something that every time somebody fires something at our people or us, we respond and the matter is over. Those days are gone. In fact, if you look back till 26/11 and so on, many times we didn't even respond. We started responding only after 2019, Balakot and so on. But now, from what I can read between the lines, our leadership believes that this has to be taken as a long-term view. The current phase is over, but the overall war is not. And what that means, maybe we can talk about that in a bit. So I believe what the leadership set out to do, they achieved. And well, let me give you evidence. Some people might say, no, we are just putting gloss over, we're putting gloss over what happened. Maybe we didn't have the heart to do it, etc. No, if that was the case, wouldn't we have mobilized the army? Wouldn't we have done what we did in Parakram? There were no signs. Wouldn't our Air Force have crossed over to the other side? We didn't cross the borders because there was never the intention to take it that far. Should we take it that far? When should we take it that far? They're subsequent questions. But right now, I firmly believe we have met the limited objectives we set out to do.
So the Pakistan army and terror attack, because I call it that way only, it's not a terror attack in isolation on Pahalgam. And then the Operation Sindoor, we have seen that red lines on both sides have been crossed. Now, the Indian attack on the Pakistani air bases and nuclear storage sites have caused a lot of panic. We have we are in the process of stopping water there. We have still not stopped. The Indus Water Treaty has been kept in suspension. Now, Pakistan considers the stoppage of water as an act of war. On the other hand, Pakistan wishes, I mean, it's very difficult to see Pakistan giving up its that cutting India through bleeding India through 1,000 cuts policy, because they see it as a very low cost asymmetric warfare. And it now must be feeling very reckless also. First of all, sir, it gets a very bloody nose. So it must be feeling reckless after getting support from countries like China, Turkey, and Azerbaijan to an extent. So would you agree, sir, that tension is still simmering just on the surface, and Pakistani army cannot be trusted, and the only thing we can trust Pakistan, the Pakistani army, is to do what they have been doing for all those years? So how does this go forward?
You're absolutely right. I'm going to make several points about Pakistani disposition and Pakistani army. The first thing is, as a country, they have what is called as cultivated irrationality. They tend to behave irrationally from time to time. There are too many examples to be given, but Kargil is one example in front of you. Number two, the mistake that we mustn't make is ever to foist our rationality template onto the enemy and say, this is what they are likely to do. They won't do that. They will do something else. In fact, that is the classic definition of asymmetric warfare. The weaker party doesn't follow the same rules, or they would lose. Pakistanis should be, the only thing you can bet on is that they are going to be irrational and they're going to do something silly again. As far as they're gaining a lot of confidence from the so-called support of Turkey and Azerbaijan, all the best to them. I can cite previous examples where they have misread history and misread political dynamic. In 1971, the 7th Fleet was moved by Richard Nixon's government. It was moved not to deter India from winning Bangladesh, which we had already, or East Pakistan, which we had already almost done. But if you read Kissinger's book, it was done to make sure that we didn't free our forces and go on and capture West Pakistan. So they had American support in 71. They shouldn't forget that these supports happen and then they disappear. In 71, China didn't even step in to help them. So I think they would be really badly off if they became reckless or overconfident from what has happened. As I said, our objectives were limited, and that's what we did. Now, as far as their rationality is concerned, please remember, unlike India, where you can be fairly sure that it is the government of the day whose policies will lead us to a conflict or the lack of it thereof, right? We go as per, because it's an established democracy. So it's not terribly hard to read an Indian approach. We may be unpredictable in where we will do it, when we will do it, and so on and so forth. In case of Pakistan, there are so many inner dynamics. You don't even know who's running the country.
True.
You do not know which prism, or through which prism, who's looking to decide that we should have a war. We are not sure today whether it is Asim Munir, who in order to back up his persona, went on to do this. We are not sure whether the Pakistani government, which is floundering with parlous economic state of affairs, was doing that. Some people say they are fed up with Balochistan and what happened in the Jafar Express. They've decided to retaliate against India foolishly. So we don't know. So therefore, there cannot be trust. We need to verify every single time we look at them. And that's how we see it. So we've got to be prepared all the time. the tension may be simmer just below the surface, on top of the surface, doesn't really matter. We are at war, and we must understand that till the time we have settled this problem once and for all.
So the Prime Minister, while he's addressing the nation after the ceasefire, he was very categorical. He sort of laid down the strategic doctrine, so as to say. People are calling it the Modi doctrine, but the doctrine is there, sir, whatever we call it. So the first thing is that the terrorist attack on India will get a fitting reply. We'll give a fitting response. Secondly, India will not tolerate a nuclear blackmail. Then he went on to say that he will take very strict action at every place from the roots of terrorism emerge. Thirdly, he said that there is no differentiation between the government sponsoring terrorism and the masterminds of terrorism, which is very, very clear and very categorically. So, militarily and strategically, how do you assess this doctrine? And the second part of this question is, sir, are the Indian armed forces and the strategic community per se prepared and ready to walk the talk?
We are ready to prepare, we're ready and prepared so long as we read this doctrine in the correct perspective. If we again start, expecting that tomorrow morning we'll get up and somehow we will take away POK or we will have an Akhand Bharat, that's not going to happen. It has to be understood in a long-term perspective. Now, let's look at the three things that the Prime Minister said. First, he said that we are going to respond to any further acts of terror. Of course, the elected leader of a democracy can say nothing different than that, because protecting the people is one of his prime duties. Having said that, it does not mean that every single terrorist attack will be replied to next morning.
Yes, sir.
It also doesn't mean that we will reply it in the same fashion as we did. God knows predictability is the worst enemy in operations. So hopefully we are not thinking of that. It's not like every time it happens when we go bomb Subhanallah Mosque. That's not going to happen. We may have something else in our mind, and I hope what we have in mind is a long-term solution to this problem. And when I say a long-term solution to this problem, if this cannot be sorted out diplomatically, the chances of which are very dim, then there has to be a long-term perspective, to which I will just come to in the third part of this question. The second part is about the nuclear blackmail. Absolutely. The Pakistanis don't care about any blackmail. Why should we? It's not like we have to mirror their thoughts, but we are a far bigger country. Back in I think in 2010 or whatever, our economy of 2019, our economy size was 5 times the size of Pakistan. Today it is 11 times. We are a far more powerful country, far more advanced country, capable of doing all this. So for us to worry about nuclear blackmail should be a thing of past, even if it existed at the periphery of our thoughts. It didn't bother Pakistan when they came to Kargil. At that time, both the countries were nuclear powered countries. It didn't bother them this time. It didn't bother them immediately after Balakot that they decided to fly their F-16s and bomb a place or two in India. So therefore, that should be the subject of discussion. In fact, we should further build on our target delivery systems, which have proved to be fantastic in this war. We are able to attack at long distances with pinpoint accuracy, breaching Pakistan's air defenses. That is what is going to carry the nukes. Heaven forbid it comes to that. So we don't have to worry about their blackmail. The third part is about solving this problem in the long term, and are we capable of doing this, and so on and so forth. Look, it was my opinion, it's my humble opinion, because I'm just another layman who retired from the army 10 years ago. I know no better than most people. But it was my opinion at the beginning of this whole operation that we should take a long-term view. We should consciously go into an arms race with Pakistan. If our economy has to make some sacrifices, so be it. Pakistan cannot keep up with that arms race. They cannot keep walking around with a ball in their hands and keep building weapons. So we must take a 5 to 10-year perspective of this problem and say, we are going to go into an arms race. And the day we decide to solve the problem, whichever problem exists between India and Pakistan, we will do it when we are fully prepared and we have a clear domination over them. Today, while we have dominance over them, the fact is that border to border, when you're just sitting on the line of control in IB, we are not that far ahead of them because our forces are also on the Chinese on the line of actual control, and heaven forbid we must keep something for the on the eastern side now as well. So therefore, I think we should start looking at a long-term perspective and consciously go into an arms race in a markedly prepared way, right? By which I mean looking at our equipment, looking at our vacancies. Maybe we should rescind the Agniwar altogether and say everybody, all troops can be kept by the army or the navy or the air force. So we can, once we do that, I think this period is to be utilized more for strengthening our economy, because one of the lessons here is the world listens to the powerful. So therefore, let's look at our economy, not just from the perspective of war, but as we have always done, from an overall perspective of becoming a truly strong and wealthy country. That's one of the reasons why we didn't go for a war right now. Okay, if I can read the leadership's mind, we don't want to mess around with an enemy who has nothing to lose, because they will again take a begging bowl and go to China or Saudi Arabia or someone. So we need to focus on that. I think as a people, when we are preparing for these next 5 to 10 years, we've got to improve our accountability of our own systems, including our intelligence, even including defense, including police. We need to improve we admire Israel. Let us copy their accountability. Let's not just people who blame Pakistan or others for it. Let's make ourselves internally strong over the next 8, 10 years. You remember I was in Europe once and I gave you a call because I saw the work ethic of another country. And I said, why aren't we like this? We need to improve. I think we should all focus on our work ethic. All this is our composite national power, which will help us when we eventually solve the problem of Pakistan. Whatever time it takes, I'm too small a cog in the wheel to say anything. But I think a long-term view should be taken, and even today, we are well prepared to not only defend ourselves, but to inflict some damage. But if someone thinks this is going to solve the problem forever, well, that may not happen right now. So let us prepare ourselves.
Actually, sir, we are nearly in a state of war on 3 fronts, sir. We already had 2 fronts, and the third front is nearly there. It's upping the ante gradually. Coming to the support the Pakistanis got from the expected partners, there's nothing new. I mean, people might have been surprised when China stood by them. China stood by them in 71. It stood by them in 1999 without doing anything. But Turkey, Azerbaijan, because they have their own ideological things to go by. But even then, sir, looking at the support or the lack of it from certain countries for India, I'm talking about India now, sir. Do you think that India needs to revisit the external policy and the strategic orientation it has as of now?
The answer is yes and no. I will come to the yes part in a bit. Why it should not surprise anybody is because in the time of war, most countries do not take sides. In case of Pakistan as well, really the markedly open side taking only in terms of words was by Turkey and Azerbaijan, right? They went out of the way to make statements. Nobody else made a statement. Nobody in the Middle East made a statement. No one else said this is right or that is right. If we expect that suddenly people will prop up and start siding with India, well, that's not realistic. That's not how the world, the external affairs works. Also, we need to be much better at selling our ideas. We were the victims. We were the ones who were hit. We were the ones who were retaliating, not Pakistan. I think both our intelligence as well as our ability to find evidence quickly and give out evidence more firmly and clearly is the one. There are certain reports of New York Times which are selling the idea far better than our people in our media have done. So therefore, I think let's not go too much by what Turkey said and what Azerbaijan said. As far as China is concerned, I read the Global Times and the Chinese Daily almost every day, and I still read it to have a look at what they are saying. Let me tell you that I didn't see any outright criticism of India, and all I saw was fairly factual word-to-word reporting. Pakistan said this, India said this. India said this, Pakistan said this.
Hmm.
Allegedly this, allegedly that. That's what all they were saying. So, and their newspapers are centrally controlled, right? So I don't think China did all that type of great supporting. If they have supplied them J-10s and J-17, that was done before the war. It wasn't as if they were shipping ammunition and things. So we should keep that in mind, and we should have the perspective clear. Uh, Middle East, which was the usual culprits or suspects, I would say, not culprits, who normally are expected to support Pakistan, thanks to the outreach that the Prime Minister has had. This time there was no such thing. As far as the USA is concerned, the dynamic there is very random right now. It is, you cannot predict who's going to say. And I think we should not set too much store. I sometimes get an impression that they're not even aware of what our stand on Kashmir has been and what is the right thing to say or what is not the right thing to say. Okay. I'm saying, I know this looks on a lighter note, but it is not. Let me remind you that when President Trump took over the first time, he took a call from the head of state of Taiwan, which is not even the American stated policy. They believe in what is called one China policy. But nobody told him not to take a call. So things happen in USA. I think let's go a little easy on that. We are not bound by what USA says. We are not going to be hustled into having a conversation beyond a bilateral conversation, if at all, just because USA has said that. They have their own goals. They are busy with their own tariffs. They are saying random stuff. One day the leader of Syria is a $10 million terrorist. And 6 months later, he's a handsome guy and a tough guy shaking hands with the president. So you don't know. So don't go too much by it. What I think we need to revisit is this. Yes, we should look at the strength of our friendships. We should see if we find it something lacking. And I have two radical suggestions to make, which may not go down well with very many people. I feel we've got to start building bridges with China. I know this is a hard task. I know this is an uphill task. We have a huge problem between the two countries. But by and large, looking at the Chinese actions in not intervening in the 71 war, not intervening this time, and the fact that China is keen to be a world power itself, the fact that that appears to me to be the future in which we are all moving. I think, and given what USA has done, the whole random thing starting with tariffs, I think we need to find ways to build bridges with China. That should be a good common sense policy. After all, we have not stopped trading with them. The trade has only gone up after Galwan. So we are already doing what needs to be done. But I think further outreach may be important. Second, I would say we must have a long-term peace and friendship treaty with Afghanistan. There is zero reason why Afghans are not recognized in the manner that we should. They are firstly wonderful people. We have a history with them. And secondly, what is with us waiting for people to encircle us? Why can't we reach out? Why can't we do stuff? I think, and 2 days ago, by the way, I said this about 2 weeks ago, and day before yesterday, I saw a news item that Mr. Jaishankar has reached out for the first time to the Afghan foreign minister. I think it's wonderful news. It's wonderful news. We should take the same pragmatic stand in the world polity as China does. That is, when they reach out to the African countries, they say, we don't care how you're running your country. We don't care of your policies inside. We will deal with you because you're running your country. So that should be our policy towards Afghans. And I think that might help us a great deal in the years, decades to come.
So that leads itself to two more questions, sir. China itself does not desist from provocations, the constant provocations. I mean, just day before yesterday, it was again renaming cities in Arunachal Pradesh. Arunachal Pradesh is known as something Zhangnan, something of that sort, sir. So how does a country like India, with its democracy, it's a very vibrant and at times very polarized democracy, it becomes very difficult for somebody to reach out to China. So first thing. Second, Afghanistan is itself unstable, sir. We were reaching out to the government before this. Then suddenly the Americans sort of brought in Taliban back into the picture. Now, Taliban has its own history with India. So how does this work out, sir, on the ground?
We've got to be pragmatic. We've got to be people fought with each other in the Second World War and became best of friends after that. The Japanese were bombed by Americans and became best of the friends with each other. So there are no such permanent. We've not had anything of that scale with Afghanistan or with China or anybody else. Look, I have had the occasion to go across and meet the Chinese people, of the military people, as part of the, what is known as border persons talks back in 1991, I think, or 92, I forget. And I came back even as a young officer with a distinct impression that they are under orders to raise the border issue everywhere and to keep it on record. But beyond that, they are not doing anything at all. Look, they may talk about Arunachal Pradesh being their own or this part being their own, etc., etc. But is there any action that they are taking physically other than maybe denying visas in some cases or stapling visas and so on? But the fact is, we have also not spoken to them. Please remember the history of how it started. When we were handed over the McMahon line, the Chinese settled the same McMahon line with all countries other than Bhutan and us. In our case, they reached out to the Nehru government. If you read Neville Maxwell's India's-China War, there are documentation that shows you that they repeatedly asked India to come to talks, to negotiate. We understood, Nehru understood, that the word of negotiation means give and take. And since Patel's position in the cabinet was becoming strong, he was in no position to give anything. So he thought Chinese are going to take something from me. And he kept saying, but there's nothing to negotiate. This border is settled. Historically, the McMahon line has never been ratified by the Chinese. Only once in 1914 or 1911, in Simla, two of their people came and they were made to, initial the boundary. And after that, they went back. I believe they were beheaded. So that is where it ended. I think what the Chinese say, they keep saying stuff about Taiwan. They say things, but unless we do an outreach and find out, can we just sort of let this problem lie at the back, as a backdrop, and continue to act, work with them on other fields? Maybe we can. So I would say let's not go too much by what each country says. Let's look at the actions of it. What are the actions? If words were to be believed, then the Pakistanis are the most peaceful country in the world. They say, "Hum to kuch bhi nahi karte. We do nothing." So it's not the words which are important. I'm convinced.
They actually don't do anything, sir. They actually don't do anything besides pricking India. That is the only thing they do. Taking this forward,
by the way, sir. Let me full disclosure. Let me say this. Let nobody misunderstand that I'm a great China fan or I love their ideologies and stuff like that. No, I'm a great India fan. I'm saying this in the Indian interest. Let's reach out. Let's talk to them. Maybe learn some lessons from them in their economic growth. Let's go that route rather than only blaming this or that. Okay, yeah, go on, please.
So taking this forward, we were talking about the ecosystem about the narrative war and the media this time around, sir. There were certain hassles, sir. One day, there was one particular ignominious evening when we went on attacking everybody and we had captured, bombed the hell out of the Karachi port. Asim Munir was under custody. He had been arrested. All sorts of stories. So it was not exactly very glorious, I would say, sir. So how do you see media? Because you work with so many people, corporate houses, TEDx. What is the impact of our media on building perceptions about war?
Yeah, so I've had some experience with media. I appeared on a BBC documentary during my days in Kashmir. There's a 45-minute documentary. I saw them firsthand how they function. And of course, during this war, I was multiple times on YN TV and Mojo Story, etc., etc. Look, this is a very shameful chapter in our current history. The way our media is behaving, they do not realize the enormous damage that they're doing to our country. When you do psychological operations, you're supposed to brainwash the enemy, not yourself. You are supposed to change their mind. It is perception management of the enemy, not perception management of your own people. People will listen to anything. People will listen to something which is entertaining. look at the enormous responsibility media should have understood to have. So what are they doing? They are the ones who are putting these thoughts in everybody's mind that we are at this moment in such a muscular position that we are going to capture Karachi by 4 o'clock in the morning and maybe by 6 o'clock, things like that. It's laughable. In fact, the day ceasefire was announced, I just joked with somebody. I said some of these media people who have already reached Karachi will have a very long night walking back all the way. So the other thing is, you see, when you keep changing the mind of your population like this, then you are doing a great deal of damage, because it is the public perception and the public mood which then starts compelling the government of the day. Right? Here is the Prime Minister saying something totally different. He's saying we are going to only attack the terrorists. Our war is not against Pakistan. In fact, Pakistan should have helped us. That's his narrative. And look at the narrative of the people sitting on the television with zero proof of, what they speak without zero proof. I think it's an act of complete lack of patriotism to do this. I feel the most patriotic act is to go for the truth, to understand the truth. All truth need not be told, but what you tell should be truthful. That is how you build credibility. Nobody's saying that if something wrong has happened in your country, you start speaking about it during war. That's not patriotism. But what you speak must be absolutely truthful, because otherwise, as a nation, I'm afraid anybody watching us from anywhere else would have said, what nonsense is this? This is the type of media we have, and I don't want to name any channels. We used to laugh at Pakistani channels doing this. Are we going to become like Pakistanis? Are we going to mirror their standards? Is what we are doing. So I think let's stay sober. Let's say resolute and strong, but not. There are several people in the media who did. There are some honorable mentions, by the way.
True.
And while I don't want to single out anybody, but I think people have done some great job. Print media, by and large, has done a great job. The Hindu, the Indian Express, they write stuff which is, well validated. Or even commentators like Praveen Swami or Ajay Sani or Christian Fair, that American lady. They talk a lot of objective stuff, Wine and Mojo, and I don't want to talk about all the channels. But so they've been very good parts, but the majority, my simple yardstick for anyone who cares to listen to me is any media channel where people are shouting, don't waste your time.
I agree, sir. We'll give them that brain fade evening and grant them that, sir. It happens to everybody. Maybe mistakes happen. And to one final question, sir. So you are a veteran. You have served the army with such distinction. And this is something which is not talked about generally. That do you have a message for the countrymen as to their role, if at all any conflicts happen in future? What should a common person like me, sir, not an army man, what should I do?
My very simple, humble suggestion is, in this country, thankfully, majority of people love the army, armed forces, particularly the army. I mean, I've been to rural areas all over India during 40 years of my wearing uniform, and I've seen we got unqualified love. That is wonderful. But what doesn't happen is the countrymen don't follow what the army does. How about being disciplined? How about having a great work ethic? How about staying united? How about all that? We are busy dividing each other in a manner as if that is, as if beating each other within the country is the solution to defeating Pakistan. How idiotic is that? There's an American comedian who I greatly, greatly like, Dave Chappelle. He once said something about America. He said, in America, he said America can never beat China. The reason is, in America, you're either a white American or a black American or an Asian American or a Chinese American or a Hispanic or gay or straight, you are divided in multiple ways. In China, everybody is Chinese. How about that? How about us changing our mindsets and realizing the real enemy is not to thrash the closest, weakest person next to you. Okay? It is to thrash somebody else in the long term. And we can't do that unless we all stay absolutely united, exactly the way the army does. So that's my humble advice.
Thank you for that message and thank you for the time, sir. And it's been a pleasure and an honor listening to you. And we'll keep coming back to you in the future also, sir. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, Mayank, and Jai Hind.